I want to show you today how we can capitalize and make the most of our podcast CTAs with tips, tricks, and hacks. Let's go ahead and get to the episode. Welcome to the Your Podcast Mentor Show with Jonathan Jones. Here you will learn how to start, launch, and monetize your podcast. In addition to hearing the latest trends and the latest and greatest things happening in the podcast industry. Are you ready? What's going on? It's your podcast mentor, Jonathan Jones. And if this is your first time listening, or even if you're a frequent listener of the show, I'm grateful for you tapping into your podcast mentor. And the premise of this show is ultimately to show you how to establish your platform so that you can profit on purpose with your podcast. And today we're going to talk about just the strategy and how we ultimately can double down to get the most out of our podcast calls to action, AKA our CTAs. And when I was thinking about today's topic and just what I want to share with you, I was thinking back to about elementary school, right? And there was this game called Telephone Man. And the purpose of Telephone Man was there was one person on the far end of the gymnasium, right? So just imagine somebody who's standing 50 feet away from you on one side of the gymnasium. And then imagine somebody who's standing 50 feet the complete opposite direction in the gymnasium, right? And then you would whisper a message to the first person, and then there would be multiple people in between. And then the message would go from one person and then just pass along all the way to the end. And the reason I want to just share a little bit on this topic from this perspective is because so often we come to our podcasts, we come to the internet, we come to social media with good intentions, and we come to social media with the message that we want to share with the masses or to the masses. But then as it gets passed from one person to the next person to the next person, and then by the time it makes it to the end, what message once was, hey, John wants to buy your lunch today, turns into, hey, no, John does not want to go out with you. Like, it's just something that gets lost in translation. And that's one thing that I dealt a lot with in elementary school. But John, how does this apply to podcasting? It directly applies because the message coming from your lips going towards somebody else's ears a lot of times gets lost in translation. So today I'm going to help you get clarity there. But even in addition to that, I'm going to help you set up the whole framework. So let's take it from the top. Okay, let's take it from the top. Before we can even talk about giving a clear call to action, the first thing we must identify is this. Are we looking to get more leads? Are we looking to get more sales? Or are we looking to get more traffic? John, break those down. Okay, let me break it down. So a lead is ultimately somebody who has an interest in your product. Okay, this somebody could be a potential buyer. They could be ready to buy right now. They could be ready to buy in the future. That's a lead. Somebody is, to get more sales, you're pushing out a different type of message. You're trying to create urgency. You're trying to get that person to pull out their wallet and turn to a buyer right now. Okay. And then traffic ultimately is just driving people. It's more of a shotgun approach, right? To where you're just trying to hit a large mass of people and just begin to build your list. And thinking of it like that, it's not as focused. Okay. So are we trying to get leads? Are we trying to generate sales? Or are we trying to get traffic? So just keep that in your mind. Which one are you trying to do on your podcast? Or which one are you wanting to do on your podcast? We don't try, we do. Okay. So after we identify that, the next thing we must identify is, what do you want the audience to do? What do you want that listener who's in their car driving down the road? What do you want that listener who's at home relaxing, listening to your podcast? What do you want them to do? And some of the time, the calls to action can sound like this. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Leave a rate and review on Apple. Join my Facebook group. Text a word to this number, right? What are you wanting the audience to do? Are you wanting them to visit a link and click that link and then download the PDF? Right? So first we have to identify, are they a lead? Is it for traffic? Is it for sales? The next thing is, what are you wanting them to do? And for instance, for me, I have an upcoming training that's getting ready to come out in the next couple of weeks. And it's actually going to be on the 15th, November 15th. I'm doing a webinar. And what I want the people to do is I want them to click the link so that they can get registered for the webinar, right? So we want to identify what we're wanting that person to do, okay? I want people to get signed up for the webinar because I want those people to then turn into clients, because like I said, my goal is to help people establish their platform so they can profit with purpose from their podcast. So we want to know what we want them to do. All right, then the next thing that we get them to do, or the next thing that we must do, is be clear and be concise. Hit the link in my bio. Click the link down in the show notes. Leave a rate and review. Send me a DM. Text me. You see how those are one sentence. It was clear, it was concise, point blank and period. One thing about clarity is that a confused buyer, right? If there's no clarity, a confused buyer always says no. That's what one of my mentor, Russell Brunson, says. A confused buyer always says no. So we want to keep it as simple as possible. Then the next thing is right here. Have you ever realized that if you're driving somewhere and then you ask someone for directions, they'll make it very easy. They'll give you landmarks. If you're in Atlanta, they'll say, oh, you go down there, you see the big chicken. And then once you see the big chicken, then you make a right. You're going to see the Walmart on the corner. Then you make a left. You're going to see a big red sign. And once you see the big red sign, that's how you know you made it. You want to be that clear with your call to action. You can say, go down in the show notes. At the top of the show notes, click the link that says, get my free download checklist here. Okay. We can put one of those links right up at the top. We can put it as all caps. So then when you share that with the individual and you describe it that way, they say, oh, so I'm going to go down in the show notes. I'm going to look at the link. And then once you make sure you tell them that the link is going to be like highlighted in blue, or it's going to be blue text, it's going to be all caps. Now that's being very clear and making it easy for the people to do the action that you want them to take. Because the more work that goes into it for the customer, the less likely they are to buy, the less likely they are to take the action. Because think about it. If it was difficult for you to drive to the drive-through, and then you still had to, imagine you had to drive through the drive-through, you give them your order, then you get out the car and then have to go inside and pay and pick it up. You wouldn't go through the drive-through. You would say, I'm just going to order my food at home, Uber Eats or something, because you don't want it to be difficult. And that's the same thing here. The customer never wants it to be difficult. They want it to be easy. Okay. So we want to keep that in mind. But then this one's really good. This one's really good. But once we tell them how to do it, the next thing we always have to keep in the forefront of our mind, what's in it for me? And the me is not you. Okay. The me is your audience. The me is your potential client. What's in it for them? We want to make sure that we let them know when you click subscribe to my YouTube channel, you're going to be getting updates. You're going to be getting all the tips, all the tricks, and all the podcast hacks to help you start, launch, and monetize your podcast. right? I want to be very intentional to let them know what they're going to get when they click subscribe. And you want to do the same thing. You want to be very intentional. When you click that link to get your free PDF download, what you're going to get in there is going to be my secret formula for how you ultimately can grow your podcast. The next thing you might want to let them know is you can click that link, and then after you finish the training, you're going to now have techniques that I've learned over 4 years of podcasting to help you elevate your brand, right? You want the people to know already in their mind what they're getting before they even decide to sign up. Because if they know going in what they're getting, then they're going to be more likely to sign up. Got it? Good, good, good. And then once we get down to all of that, then you want to test it. Test, 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 test. I cannot say this enough. You have to test. And when I say test, maybe you want to test rolling calls to action. John, what are rolling calls to action? Rolling calls to action ultimately are where one week you put out a call to action to get somebody to subscribe to your channel. Another week, you maybe put out a call to action to let somebody getting a free PDF download. Then the next week you might test and say, well, let's see about giving them a free mini course. Or you might say, well, let's just test changing out some of the sales copy or some of the language that we have on the website. Let's see about changing out the colors on the website. Let's see about changing the color of the button. And you might say, well, John, why are you talking about testing through all these different things, testing fonts, testing sales copy, testing the button? Because when we begin to test these things, now we're able to measure what resonates with our audience. And when you know what resonates with your audience, when you have the pulse of your audience, that truly is going to help you capitalize at an even higher level. Because I said we're talking about how to get highly converting leads. The only way we're going to get highly converting leads is if we know what our lead is desiring. If we know what our lead's pain point is, if we know what our audience pain point is, then we're able to let them know that we have the solution for what their pain is. Yep. So once again, don't get caught in the dark, and don't get caught up looking like Mr. Telephone Man or Mrs. Telephone Woman, okay? When I was in middle school, that playing Mr. Telephone Man never got me the result I wanted when I sent a friend to tell the young lady I had an interest in that I liked her. I always had to come back around, and I always had to say, I didn't say what they said, but this is what I said, and this is how I feel. And then when I did that, they were like, oh, John, I didn't know that's how you felt. But now that I do know this is how you feel, now we can take this thing further. So at the end of the day, before we even talk about coming through with a highly converting CTA, we have to first, this is the cliff notes, this is the recap, we have to first make sure that we know if we're looking for traffic, if we're looking for leads, or if we're looking to generate more sales. Then after that, then we have to figure out what we want them to do. Do we want them to subscribe? Do we want them to leave a review? Do we want them to text us? Do we want them to sign up for our webinar? Whatever it might be, get clear, okay? Then after we get clear on what we want them to do, we must be clear in our ask. All right, clear and concise. Click here, download this, click the link in my show notes. All right, then after we're clear about what we want them to do, and then once we share that, then we have to tell them how to do it. We have to tell them how to do it. Yes, I know it's easy for you. Yes, I know it seems like common sense for you, but break it down for your people. Make sure that they know and make sure they understand exactly how to do it. If not, a confused buyer always says no. After we get past that, then we hit the what's in it for me. Let them know if they click this link, they're going to get 25% off. If they sign up for your program now, they will save $500. Not about you getting an affiliate commission. Nobody cares about that. Let them know what they'll get. And then the last part is we have to test the call to action, see who's responding, see who's not. Well, I guess you won't see who's not responding unless there's nobody responds. But we want to make sure that we do those things. And by way of us doing those things, that allows us to now be able to have the pulse of our audience. And when you have the pulse of your audience, then you can nurture that need. All right, family, if you have a question, right, as always, if you have a question, you can go to jonathanjonespeaks.com. We're going to have the link down in the show notes, jonathanjonespeaks.com/mentor. Okay, you click that link and then you can scroll down to the bottom of that website. It's going to be an orange button that has a microphone on it. Click that button and then you can ask your question. You can submit it to potentially be featured on podcast Q&A with JJ, and I'll answer it in our next episode. But outside of that, family, just get some calls to action. Test them out, see what works for your audience. And then when it works, like my coach Word Taylor says, run the play, run the play, run it over and over and over again until it doesn't work, and then tweak it, and then test, run the play. Family, it's your podcast mentor, Jonathan Jones. And the premise of this show is ultimately to help you establish your platform so that you can profit on purpose from your podcast. Until next time, peace and God bless.